Hi, I'm Colleen.
And I'm Chrissy. And
We
we
are
are
the
the
C
C
Sisters.
On this episode, we will be talking about things we wish we knew sooner. The first thing we're going to cover is the different types and different stages. So, Colleen?
So with mine, with breast cancer, it was, you had to figure out what stage you were at. They had to do blood work and stuff like that. So we had like 1, 2, 3, and 4 stages, and 4 is the worst. And then you have to find out if it's metastatic or not. So that was really confusing starting off because I didn't know what stage I was at. And then when they said you're stage 3, almost stage 4, I'm like, okay, it's the hurry up and wait though. So you find the stage and then we got to figure out an action plan and what we need to do. And they downloaded you on a bunch of information all at once. And you're like, okay. And trying to take that all in while still trying to process the fact that you have cancer.
Mm-hmm.
And
That's a lot to process all at once.
it really is. It really is. And that's why you need somebody with you at all times. It's not necessarily a driver per se or anybody, just someone that you trust that will pay attention when the doctor's talking and write things down. Like, it's great to have people there that are moral support, but if they're not paying attention for you and with you, you might miss something that's very important.
I still do that at appointments. I'm like, what did they say? Did they say this? Did they say that? And my husband usually goes, and he's always a good one to help me remember.
Yes. And I think that's part of being married in regards to it and having the significant other to have that moral support, but also, they're this person you're supposed to lean on besides God first. God first, obviously, but then your significant other is supposed to be the next person to lean on and be the support when you need it.
Mm-hmm. And if somebody's, their husband can't make it or they're not married, they can always take, a sibling, a mother-in-law, or well, they wouldn't have a mother-in-law if they weren't married, but they could take any friend or family member.
You just really need somebody that if something was to happen during your time there, they would advocate for you and speak up, not just yes, ma'am, them to death or okay. You don't need people like that with you during this time. And I think part of the thing that got me to really focus on that was the fact that, both times I found out alone. And I thought that was not cool at all. Like, you can tell people they need to have somebody with you. Because you already know you're walking in there and that's what they're going to tell you, especially because they say they can't tell you over the phone. So when they say, like, you need to come in, we need to talk, I'm like, that I should have been like, you need to come with me. But it didn't register because I never thought, cancer did run in my family. I did the genetic testing. I don't show any of the markers. And then here I go again. And even the oncologist did the genetic markers again because he couldn't believe it. And to find out that it was environmental, not genetic, I didn't even understand there were two differences.
Yeah, I wouldn't either. No idea.
And with environmental, it could be a number of things. It could have been where I grew up in Massachusetts. There was a lot of places that had issues with people getting cancer because of the groundwater, the ground, stuff we eat. We have to be careful. Stuff, even after, we have to be careful about that too. I never knew that deodorants had metal in it until after. With my lymph nodes being removed, they're like, you can't have metals in your deodorant. And I was like, they put metals in deodorant? What? I couldn't even believe it. And then I looked at the deodorant and it says no metals. I was like, okay, I did not know that.
I had heard about that, but I had heard deodorant causes cancer, but then I was always like forgetting to put my deodorant on. I'm like, well, I guess.
Well, and then they talk to you about like baby powder.
Yeah.
That was
too.
something that they used a lot when I was little too. And I was like, but I didn't get cancer there. I got it at my breast, and then I got skin cancer. And the skin cancer, actually, I got that because of the chemo treatments brought out the cancer cells within me. So when I thought there wasn't even a benefit besides killing the cancer, because with chemo, it pretty much kills everything, including your immune system. But yeah, it also brings those dormant cells, if they were there, out, which I was very thankful for, because the skin cancer I had was very minor, where they just needed to simply remove it, and that was it. And that's the thing with the different stages of cancer. With different stages, there are different treatments. So with yours, it wasn't 1, 2, 3, and 4, right?
No, it is 1, 2, 3, 4, but it's grade. It's not staged.
Yeah, you had grades.
Yeah, so there's different grades, and glioblastoma, and there's different types of gliomas. So it originates from glioma. I'm gonna screw some of these up, but there's 4 different grades, and I'm not sure which ones are which. I just know glioblastoma is grade 4, and then astrocytoma. So that's a grade 3 now. And then there's oligodendroglioma. And that, I think that's a grade 3 too. I think it can be grade 2 or 3. And
so the lower the grade, the higher the survival rate or something?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So the type I have is grade 4 glioblastoma. It's not curable. I mean, I'm not saying there's not miracles. Even if like you're a 10-year survivor, they're not going to consider you cured because there's technically no cure.
Well, I feel that way about all cancers. Like, you always have to keep an eye out, because it could be 5, it could be 10, it could be 20 years later, or it might never happen too. It's kind of like when they tell you like the side effects, they could go away, or they could potentially not ever go away.
Yeah.
It's like they just don't know.
Yeah.
So they like to
they
just
don't
say those
know,
things.
but I mean,
because they say you're terminal too. But you're sitting here right now.
Yes, it's terminal because only 3% of people survive 5 years. So very, very, very few people survive up to even 5 years.
And see, my type of cancer 5 years ago, they didn't have the treatment that I did, the TCHP. That is recent. And so that's boosted the survival rate immensely for mine, because mine was just, no, I was triple positive, which is not a whole lot common. So it's HER2 positive, estrogen receptor positive, progesterone positive. That's why they call it triple positive. But they don't talk about that,
Yeah.
And I always want to tell people, do not look at the survival rates and think it applies to you.
I mean, it was hard for me because I didn't know what glioblastoma even was. I mean, I knew it was I knew it was a tumor because OMA in medical terminology stands for tumor. So I knew it was a tumor, but I didn't know. And so I Googled it just to see what glioblastoma was. And then it immediately said the survival rate and statistics for it. It's, as soon as you look it up, that's what you see. It's very hard to treat. And other reasons that, or what am I trying to say? The glioblastoma is based on like high amounts of necrosis and the tumor, and then there's proliferation, which means the cells just like, all cancer does that, but in glioblastoma it grows very quickly. So mine didn't.
So it kills a bunch of cells?
No, the cells replicate. The cancer cells replicate even faster.
Okay.
So
it's fast growing.
Yes, it's very fast growing. It didn't stem from a lower grade. It just comes out of nowhere, and starts growing like really rapidly. And that's why glioblastoma is so deadly, because like right now, if I didn't have a tumor, I could have one grow very quickly and be dead within a month, or it just grows really fast. And then it's based on genetic factors. They biopsy it, and they can see things from that. Then they do genetic testing, and they can
Okay,
look
so
at
they
that.
do genetic testing for you guys too.
Yeah, but
I swear, like once women hit puberty, I feel like they should automatically, that should be like a prerequisite. Like this is, we always get the pap smears every
they
year
do
and
the
stuff like
genetic
that.
testing on the tumor.
Yeah.
So you can't tell if you're going to have it. Like mine is not genetic. Like you can't get it genetically. There's
Okay.
been family members that have like all gotten it.
Mm-hmm.
There was a school somewhere too. Can't
So
remember
there's
where it
not a whole
was.
lot of research that has been done
I mean,
compared to like breast cancer and like the BRCA1, BRCA2 gene genetic testing. There hasn't been any genetic testing for that.
they've found that it's not genetically transmitted.
Oh, so it could be more of an environmental thing.
Yes, and like I would teach my students about cancer, and it could be genetics, it could be toxins, it could be even a virus. You could get a virus, and your DNA could mutate.
Mm-hmm.
Call it like the perfect storm. Like everything has to be like we all have cancer cells, but there's something that happened, whether it was toxins. Mine
Initiating that cancer dormant cell.
Yeah, it could be anything, and you just don't know, and they can't tell you.
And see, I didn't know that before all of this going on. I didn't know any of that we all have cancer dormant cells and that could be, and to me, that was just mind blowing to me. So like these doctors starting out with all these treatments and all this research and everything, and you don't think that maybe with all the genetic testing that you're doing and the supplementing of DNA and replacement therapy and stuff like that, you don't think to replace the cancer gene with something that's not cancerous to begin with?
That's what I think is going to happen in the future. I think they're going to be doing something with DNA to like change it. I think that might be where like the cure is. To treat each patient like differently, like based on their DNA and their genes.
Right. Because we are all different. And that's why, like, talking about different stages and stuff like that, but also different treatments. I mean, that's also depending upon the person.
Yeah. And I was going to say, how I'd explain cancer is like it's, your DNA gets damaged and then it like puts on a costume and acts like regular good cells when it's the cancer cells. And so they're able to replicate because the macrophages or whatever aren't destroying them. They don't see them as an enemy. And so they're able to like replicate fast.
The way I like to say it, it's the wolf in sheep's clothing.
Yeah. Yeah. That's exactly it too.
It hides for a while where you, if you're not aware and you're not like me, not doing the self-checks and stuff like that. But what I like to tell people is you really need to listen to your body. And I mean, you listened because you like to work out and that has a lot to do with listening to your body and what it can do and can't do and when to push and when not to push. But people that don't have that already mindset, they're not going to even think like it could happen to me, or never say never is what I say. Never say never.
Yeah.
That never happened to you, never happened to a family member, because it's happening more often. And I don't think people are talking about it enough.
Yeah, no. And I feel like just since I've been diagnosed, like, and I don't know if it's because I'm diagnosed with cancer now that I see it all over the place. Like I can't, like it's all over the place. Like so many people in the church, so many stories on the internet. I like see it everywhere. I think it is like, and I don't know why. I think a lot of it is there's toxins in our environment, the food we're eating. I mean, they say our
we have
cell
more
phones,
cell phones. We have internet,
the towers. So there's the
pollution
water.
in the water.
Yeah. So I mean, you have to live in a bubble, to kind of prevent it fully.
And I also don't think it is a social status or an economic status. It can happen to anybody, anywhere, at any time. And people really need to understand that. It really can. And you need to listen to yourself and you need to look out for others too. And to know, what is out there. I mean, as soon as I found out, like I said, my husband, super Mr. Research, he immediately went to what can I do in this situation? And he was like research guru. He found what I had and he researched as the heck out of it, I like to say, because he found everything he possibly can on it. I don't know if you did the same. Did you?
I did, but I think there can be a negative part to that. I think you can get so focused on like what not to eat, what supplements can I take, feeling like you did something wrong or you're gonna do something wrong to make it worse. And I feel like you can focus so much on that, and then I just got tired of it.
Mm-hmm.
I was even doing my PhD.
Mm-hmm.
I stopped doing it now because I feel like God wanted me to take a turn and do something else.
Right.
But I was going to do my PhD study, my dissertation on like glioblastoma research on like long-term survivors. But even that, I feel like can be overload and like too much on your brain. And I feel like,
do you think it's the emotional factor?
Yeah, and just spending so much time. And me, I want to focus more on my family and on God, and not that you can't take supplements, not that you can't research, but I feel like it's just so overwhelming. It's just so overwhelming. There's so much information.
But I feel like that's where other people that are with us can step up in that aspect, because we don't necessarily need to hear all the good and the bad and all that, because it can be emotionally and spiritually draining.
Yeah. And for me, it was. And for me, it just drained me. And it just made me feel like more negative, I guess. I don't know. I wanted to spend the time I had, because I don't know how much time I left. I mean, we don't. Nobody does. But in my case, the statistics say, I'm not going to reach retirement age, and I most likely won't be here for that. I mean, I could be, and maybe God will keep me around, but I don't want to waste my time on that so much.
Right. Well, I mean, it all starts with the care team, right? You get this care team together of oncologists and doctors and surgeons, and I had plastic surgeon for what I had. And you probably had a radiologist. I had a cardiologist on mine because of me having to do the echocardiograms. And then after I had a dermatologist, I kind of went down the checklist, and then an OBGYN after. And you are going to have doctors that are going to conflict too on different procedures and what to do if we do it. And that's where the research, I feel, comes in handy to know the options, because the oncologist might not tell you all the options that you actually do have, because he goes with his go-tos sometimes, like his tried and trues, or what's been the most research, but isn't necessarily the thing that might be perfect for you.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I didn't get a lot of education from my doctors, and I don't know if it's because I'm a nurse and they just assumed. They told me, my surgeon told me it could be grade 3 or 4, but most likely it was going to be grade 4. And I mean, now looking back, I could even look at an MRI now and probably tell you if it was glioblastoma, just by how it looks. But nobody else really educated me on what glioblastoma was. I remember them saying, they asked me like what I knew, and I don't know. I forget what they said exactly, but they didn't really give me any education about it. They didn't sit me down, and they didn't even really tell me it was terminal. I found that all on my own. They didn't even give me, which I'm thankful for, but they didn't give me a life expectancy. I thank them for that. But I mean, I feel like maybe it was because I was a nurse.
Maybe.
And I feel like, but I worry about other patients that aren't a nurse or don't work in healthcare, maybe don't like have an advocate or know to advocate for themselves, because if not, the one big thing is that, and I didn't know this before, but I had a medical oncologist, and I had my neurosurgeon, I had my radiation oncologist, and of course, like a family doctor, but I didn't know, like, you're supposed to have a neuro-oncologist So my neuro-oncologist is at Duke while my other doctors are local. And I wouldn't have known that. I joined a support group when I was in the ER emergency room before I even had my surgery. I was like, well, I'm going to join a brain tumor support group just so I could like get more information, support if I had questions.
Well, and that's the best thing, because I found for me, I liked having my support groups through Facebook group pages of people going through the same thing. Like I just did a bunch of research looking on Facebook, all the different groups, and they were amazing because I didn't even have to do a whole lot of research. These other people already did research and what worked for them and what didn't work for them and stuff like that. And I was just like, wow. So we were talking about like different treatments, right?
And services that can be provided to you. But before that, I wanted to also mention, and it's probably different than breast cancer, but the glioblastoma, like we were talking about genetic testing.
Yeah.
They genetic test the tumor.
Right.
They do a biopsy on it to see if it's cancer. Mine can't be metastatic because it's just in the brain. I mean, there are rare cases it can.
But you know, the funny thing about that
usually
is that mine can actually become metastatic and become brain.
Yeah.
After, which I didn't even know.
Yeah. And so different. Both worlds are different. But glioblastoma is graded 4 because when they did my genetic testing, it came out, like I said, it has proliferation and necrosis in the tumor, but it also, I'm wild type, which means I don't have either of the IDH mutations or the IDH factors. They're negative. Mine are negative, so that means I'm wild type, and wild type is the worst that you can have, and I'm not mutated. And
is that because it's unpredictable?
It just, I don't know. Those are like factors, like, I don't even understand it all. I just know I'm not that, and that was like, it's a positive thing if you have those. If you're positive, IDH positive, and you're mutated, then you're like considered astrocytoma, grade 3. So it changes the grade. It used to be considered glioblastoma, like, no matter what I think if they didn't look at, because the genetic testing's newer. I think they only started to do it like within the last couple years, and so I don't know who changes all that, but like they changed the grading, and so the people with the IDH mutation or whatever it's called or positive, they're not considered wild type. They're considered they're considered mutated, and they're considered IDH positive, and so they're considered astrocytoma grade 3 now. When before they wouldn't have even looked at the genetic testing, they would have just said, you're both glioblastoma. So now it's different, but but then there's other things they look at in the genetic. They look at tumor burden, which I looked all this stuff up when we were talking about research.
Right.
Those are some things that helped in the research factor. Like I searched all my genetic testing because they didn't go over my genetic testing with me. Not really.
They didn't go over it with me either. And I'm like, okay, so it's not genetic. That's all you can say to me. Well, what is it I'm looking at?
Yeah. And so I searched all these words. I searched tumor burden. What is this? What is it? And actually mine's low. And so low means that it doesn't grow as fast or whatever. I mean, it still grows, glioblastoma grows fast, but mine's like my burden's low.
So it's like, on the lower end of the growing fast.
Yeah. So
if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I don't, to me, it like makes kind of sense, but I feel like that's one positive I have on my side. But then there's other things they look at, and I can't remember them all. But then I looked up, there's one like, and I can't remember what it's called, but that's why I forget what it was called. There's a TERT mutator, so I looked at all these different things, natural supplements to increase, the tumor the TERT mutator, and I looked up all these things, like reverse searched them, and so I feel like that can be helpful if you're looking at like what supplements to take.
And that's where like the Facebook groups were helping me. But I didn't realize how many people within our own church actually shared their stories with me as soon as they heard what I was going through too. I mean, did you?
Yeah, I'm on a glioblastoma page. I've met many wonderful people on there. And you can ask anything, or you can
it was like a safe space.
Yes, and you can use a search bar, and ask see if anybody else has asked what you were thinking or wondering or whatever. And yeah, people are supportive.
And new things are coming out all the time. And so those pages are very valuable to find out, especially when they say there's nothing more they can do for you. And then you find all these trials that are going on. I found those through that. I mean, I never had to go that route because I literally had God's hand on me, and they couldn't even find cancer where the cancer was. Just like with you've had 2 surgeries and you're here right now.
Yeah.
I mean,
and I don't have any mobility issues or memory issues. Not really. My short-term memory, I think, is
well, now we're at the age where you're kind of like, was it the cancer or is it just old age?
Yes, I don't. Was I like this before? Maybe.
Or is this, for me, it was like, oh, is this the chemo brain that they talked about or the COVID brain that they talked about? Because I had COVID twice too. And that was the other thing I wanted to tell people is that it was bad enough going through what we had to go through, but we had to go through it with all of the medical COVID restrictions.
Yeah. Well, I didn't in the hospital. Like my family could be in the hospital with me, with my surgery and everything.
So my husband could not be with me at any of the treatments except for the last 2. We had to wear the masks. He could be with me with a mask as long as he was negative to my surgery. And then he had to wait out in the car until after. And they had to call him back in.
Yeah,
and that's why my surgeries were outpatient, where normally you'd be in the hospital for a few days before going home. And that's where it's changed. COVID has changed the environment for what I go through now. Because just recently, like my complete and total hysterectomy was an outpatient surgery that should have been, 2 or 3 days in the hospital stay over.
Yeah.
They sent me home the same day.
Yeah, they're doing that more and more. I was surprised that with this past surgery, they were gonna ship me home like the day after from ICU.
That's crazy.
I was like, okay, but I mean, they kept me another day because of my jaw pain. That's the only reason. And if I would have known that, I would have just not took any pain medicine. I think they were giving me IV pain medicine, and that's why they kept me. But I would have taken like a pill form. I mean, I probably didn't need that. You know what I mean? I didn't need if they would have told me that, I would have just went home.
See, with my double mastectomy reconstruction, they maxed out on the pain meds. Because they were like, well, you were pleasant coming, because everybody coming out of anesthesia is different. Some people are pleasant. Some people are not pleasant. I'm one of the pleasant ones that kept on apologizing for being in pain. And my husband thought it was funny. And I was like, well, at least they didn't have you, honey, because you literally were yelling and throwing things at people and saying you weren't doing anything until I was in the room with you. Because he had ear surgery to replace his eardrum. When we were stationed in Okinawa, we had to go to Hawaii actually for his surgery, which everybody would love to do that. But Hawaii is just like Okinawa, and climate wise, I'd rather have been home. But
he was the one that was feisty.
Oh, he's always feisty. I think that's just innate in being a Marine. It never leaves them. But he's also from Kentucky too. And I'm from Boston, where I can be. He tell people I'm more feisty than him. But I don't know. It was weird. And when they said that they maxed out on the pain meds this last time with the complete and total hysterectomy, they had to give me a Valium for me to go home. And I was like, I've never taken Valium before in my life. I was like, Bill, was I being ridiculous or something? And he's like, no, you were perfectly calm. I'm like, now, did you look on the discharge list? Like what they gave me? He's like, no, I figured you'd read it when you got home or your sister would. And I was like, seriously? And you're supposed to be my advocate right now. Oh, man. I love you, but. funny. Seriously. Thankfully, nothing happened, and I'm still recovering now. But that's the other thing they talk about after. Like, you can have some side effects after, and they may or may not go away. I love that term. Oh, they may or may not go away over time.
I don't
I was
know.
like, so you have no idea is what you're saying. Can you just say you have no idea, because you trying to make yourself think that you're intelligent is making you look more dumb on my end. I'm sorry, but it is. And I hate the beating around the bush. Like, I'm a very direct person. Give me a goal, give me a mission, and let me go on it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I feel that God did in the instance for us. I feel that it was very humbling experience, just asking other people for help and asking, for support and for prayers, because I was always the person that was just like, hey, talk to me, let me know. I'm here for you, whatever you need. But being on the receiving end felt different.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't necessarily a bad thing, but it's where you see the grace and mercy of others, but also you learn the patience within yourself.
Yeah, and I think my family, well, I always refused help, and I'm the I can do it myself type of person, which I would say you have to watch that. I mean, you can be independent, you can be self-driven, but you have to let people help you because it's their way of coping. I feel like with my mom, she had a hard time coping with all this, and sometimes she still does, and that's okay. People deal with things how they deal with them, and everyone copes differently. And her way of coping for me was to come over and help me. And you can ask her if I would have let her help me like 5 years ago, she would say no, but she would come over and clean my house. She would do my laundry. And I feel like it was just so she could feel good that she was like seeing me and helping me and being there for me. That's her way of coping. And so I learned to be more humble and
accepting the new normal.
Yes, accepting my new normal. And luckily I only had to use a walker for like a week, and then I was back to, walk on my own. And then it was very humbling because I couldn't even like shower myself or bathe myself because I was so unsteady and I couldn't even walk down the steps. And so I had to ask for help from my husband, which it's hard to do. It's hard to humble yourself, but I feel like it was good for me to that's part of the learning experience. And
it definitely is a learning experience. Now for the treatments for you.
Yes. So there's always, and I don't know if they use that terminology with yours too, but they call it the standard of care.
Yes, they do.
I feel like they use that for like a lot of different.
They're very general and generic in a lot of parts.
Yeah. And so the standard of care is generally surgery if they can remove it. And then after that, they wait a month and then they get another MRI.
To get like a baseline?
Yeah, to get a baseline. And they do, I think they did a CAT scan too, but for the radiation.
The full body scan with the radiation and then the CAT scan and then the MRI?
No, it was just my head. I've never had a full body.
I had a full body.
I mean, I did have a full. I had my
to find out, make sure it wasn't anywhere else.
Yeah, I had the CAT scan of that, but this is for targeted radiation. They usually do an MRI to like get a more
narrow sense of where they need to target the radiation.
Yeah, even though they know where the tumor was, they do the MRI to get like a more, like you said, a baseline to make sure it hasn't grown. Because I know I've seen some people that, they have their surgery and by the time they wait a month and get another MRI, it's grown back already.
Right.
So that can even happen. And I've seen that happen to people. And then they do the radiation. It's 6 weeks. It's Monday through Friday for 6 weeks. So I had to drive down there every day.
Now, was that to Duke?
No, to Wilmington.
Okay.
The appointment only lasts 15 minutes. That you put this mask on, they do the radiation, and then you leave.
You never felt like claustrophobic with that mask on?
No, it's really warm. When they make it, it's like, I don't even know, it's like wet, and they dip it in something, and then they slap it on your face.
Oh, the plaster of
Yes.
Paris kind of feeling?
It's
or
not,
the what is it? The dope.
it's just plastic. It's a
Okay.
plastic mass and it's flat.
Mm-hmm.
And then they wet it and it becomes bendable. And then they
Mhm.
like slap it on your face and like mold it, do your face mold.
Mm-hmm.
And then they take it off. And then when you come back, that's the initial appointment.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you come back, then, and I don't know, they put these marks and X's on them. For the radiation. And then you get your first radiation treatment. But yeah, I'm not really claustrophobic. You can't wear hoods. You can't wear hats.
Mm-hmm.
Because one time I wore like a t-shirt, like it was like a thin, long sleeve something with a hood on it, and it
Mhm.
was like a thin hood. And that even was like made it so much tighter. So usually you have to just wear a t-shirt.
Okay. See,
And
and I never had radiation, and with my cancer, I mean, you can possibly just do a pill, like the chemo pill. Me, I had to have a port put in, and then did the chemo treatments, and they could be pretty harsh, and the side effects, losing your hair. I was worried about throwing up, and not being able to keep food down. But I listened to what Mrs. Godwin said when she went through it. She said the first 3 days, make sure you take your Zofran every 4 hours, like they say, for the first 3 days, even if you're not nauseous, because it will stave off that nausea feeling, and you're more than likely to keep the food down. And the other thing was the chicken with white rice and chicken broth. I ate that a lot going through all my treatments, because it was like the only thing that I ate, and I felt like I had COVID all over again, because the metal taste, everything tasted like metal. And that's where my vitamin waters and my smart waters came in, keeping well hydrated. I mean, I drank like it was my job to drink water. Even when I didn't want to drink it, I was tired. I just kept drinking and drinking. I was like, the quicker I get this stuff flushed out of my system, the better I'll feel. And it was always 14 days. Like that 10th, 11th day, I started feeling better again, more like myself again. And then bam, there's the next round. Here we go. And then with the surgery, it was kind of like they tell you how you're going to be after. What are the most common things to, look out for? But everybody's body's different. And the more you do, the longer it's going to take to recover.
Yeah, I felt like actually, well, radiation can make you feel really fatigued.
Mm-hmm.
And also it's what caused my hair to fall out, and then I had to shave it. But some people get they feel really fatigued, they might suffer nausea.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like after my radiation appointments, I would go on bike rides with my husband.
Mm-hmm.
And some of them were like at least 15 miles. I would do that. And I feel like activity would actually, not for everybody, but for me, it helps me get through it, and it helped me not feel as fatigued.
Right.
I don't know. But I know some people like struggle and they're really fatigued, and then they would, they weren't going to be able to do that. But for me, it was just like what I needed to do, what I had to do for my own body. And then the chemo is like an oral chemo pill.
Mm-hmm.
And, a lot of people think, oh, it's just oral chemo. Oh, it's just oral chemo. I've heard that. Oh, you're just taking oral chemo? But it's still like...
It's still chemo.
It's still chemo. It still like has, it can cause alopecia, which loss of or thing of hair. And did make me feel nauseous. I even, had to stop and pull over on the side of the road and throw up. I threw up on Christmas. Like, I would still throw up and feel ill, but, and I would say I had to take it for like while you're taking the 6 weeks of radiation, you take 6 weeks of the oral pill, like every day.
Yeah.
And by the third or fourth week, the third week, it started getting, that's when you really notice, like, no appetite. I lost some weight. And just lifting your arms, like to hang clothes up, was difficult. And even going grocery shopping, like, putting groceries into the car, everything was difficult. But then after the 6 weeks, you have another month off.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have another MRI, and then you start taking cycles of the oral chemo, which is just 5 days.
Right.
5 days on, 23 days off, which that was much better.
Okay.
So
So during that time when you were feeling weak and stuff, you have kids too. So was your family and your friends stepping up and helping you in regards to that?
my mom was still like helping clean my house while I was working because I was working too. I went back to work after 2 weeks.
Oh, wow.
And so I just felt like,
But
again,
mentally, did that help you?
it helped me mentally, and I decided, that at that time that's just what I needed to do.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I could either sit here and get depressed, go down this dark hole or whatever, or I could just get up and I felt like I had to get back to my normal routine.
You gotta make that choice.
Mm-hmm.
You gotta make the choice to fight.
Yeah.
And every day it's a new battle. It's a
Yeah.
new fight.
And that's what it was for me. I was like, I just can't just sit here. Like, I couldn't imagine. Like, I was like, what will I do? I didn't have any idea. I was like, I just need to get up and carry out my normal routine. And so on the days that I had radiation, like a lot of days I'd go to work.
Mhm.
I'd go to my radiation appointment and then I'd go to work. And luckily I had a job that worked around it, and I could use my sick time and do that. I could come and leave as I needed for appointments.
That's where having a job that is sympathetic to the situation is
Yeah.
beneficial in regards to that.
Yeah, and mine was very sympathetic. They, if I would teach one day and I had an appointment, I would swap with the other instructor and he would teach that day, and then I would teach the other day. And so like I had a job that actually would work around that, and I could do that. So many people don't have the option. They're not
Right.
able to work. Maybe they're
I couldn't work.
yeah.
I mean, I was an at-home mom, but at the time I was, doing, writing my book because that's what people wanted me to do. And I mean, I'm still doing that 5 years later, but I had to have my stopping points because God had new chapters that he wanted me to write, and I had to wait for those chapters to be about. But I was very lucky in the community that we had through our church because I had meal trains that people would come the first 2 weeks of my, because normally I cook everything,
Yeah.
and that's the financial burden that people don't realize. This financial burden on this is, you spend a lot eating out if that's what you have to do when you're the one that's supposed to be cooking and there's
Yeah.
nobody else to cook. So when you have these meal trains from, your community, your friends, your church community, it is so helpful. But I also think in the spiritual aspect of helping, I felt the people coming by doing that was very helpful. And Miss Trudy did an amazing thing because this was during COVID time and she knew my immune system was completely gone. She had a cooler outside for people to put the food in.
Oh, okay.
So we would
Wow.
never have actual complete contact. And that we could grab it out and still be warm.
That's a good idea.
It
Yeah.
was such a good idea. So, I mean, that's one of the tips I wanted to let people know. Besides, taking that anti-nausea medicine, even when you don't think you have to, the first couple of days, especially with chemo, was very beneficial. I never threw up once and that was unheard of. I also didn't lose weight during this. I gained weight.
Oh, that is really good.
That's
amazing.
Unheard of.
Yeah.
But it also, I have what's called an overexuberant metabolism. So I had to eat every 4 hours because my food was processing so quickly before. And being an athlete, it's processing even more, and it completely changed that to turning it off almost completely. So I think that's how I gained the weight in regards to that. But we were also building a house and moving into a new house at the same time too. So they came over and helped pack because, I mean, I can't lift.
Yeah, that would have been.
I have
I could not move.
I have an 8-year-old and 13-year-old now. And, I can't even get them to clean their rooms, nevertheless pack their boxes for moving. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Come on. Let's be realistic here. And then my husband is a Marine. So he was always deployed when it came to PCSing time. So the joke was always that I handled it all. And I was like, so some of the tips and tricks that I learned from PCSing after 8 moves was I would get those dollar Dollar General, Dollar Tree, those circle stickers with the different colors.
Oh, yeah. That you use on garage sales.
Yes. So instead of that, I actually put like one room was orange, one room was yellow, one room was green. So I knew where those boxes were going, even if I had to sit and couldn't move, just by knowing the color.
Well, that's a good idea.
So even my double vision didn't matter because I'm even if I'm seeing two, it's still the same color.
Yeah,
it goes in that room. So, and my husband was so thankful in regards to that because he was gone most of the time when we did all handling all the moves, and he realized, and this was God's way of interceding and teaching him a lesson in regards to this that made our marriage much deeper in regards, because honestly, in situations like me and you have, there are high divorce rates too, just by going through what we went through.
Yeah, I've seen people posting stuff like that, like their significant other left them after they were diagnosed, and I'm like, what?
Right.
Like that would, I don't know, that would make it like 100 times harder.
And that's where you got to lean on your church community and your fellowship with the other sisters in Christ too, because no offense to men, brothers in Christ are very supportive. They were great, but the sisters in Christ can understand on a feminine level, especially with my experience, because what was taken from me is the identifying factors of being a woman and finding the new normal in regards to that.
Mm-hmm.
And in a society today that, likes to differ on different things like that, I love people for who they are, regardless. I mean, their judgment that's going to go on them, that's for God to decide. I am not the, judge in regards to that. Jesus told me to love, I love.
Mm-hmm.
But the sisterhood in Christ was very beneficial because they understood on that kind of level to give me that support in regards to the cards we received when we were going through it, which were, I can't thank people enough.
Yeah.
Just honest
Me neither.
opinions.
It's hard to be able to think, like, you can't just, it's almost too much to put into words. You can't find the words to tell people thank you. Like, I don't know. I got like so many cards, like so many gifts, like every day, like so many things were coming.
But seeing God's hand in that, because the words that came were at the time that I needed to hear them the most.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when you are involved in your Bible and you're focused and you're keeping your eyes fixed on him, you can see his hand in situations like that.
Yeah.
And I couldn't see that before. I would pray and be like, I can't hear you. Are you hearing me? I mean, is this the test time, teacher? Where you can't talk because I need to just do what's going on here. What are we going through, And then to hear those words, I mean, you could be having the worst day where you're just so sick you can't even get out of bed. And then all of a sudden, my husband comes around the corner and be like, hey, guess what? This package was just left for you.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, my first package was from Mrs. Godwin.
Aww.
And the books that she provided for me and the bookmarks I have to this day, just to know what she went through, losing her sister and her going through this. And yet she's still here. And she's not just here. She's a teacher to my child. And now she's a teacher to other and a mentor to other teachers. And I couldn't think of a better person. She has just such a kind heart. And the bravery that she just doesn't even know she has to be able to tell me her story, to be there for me, to be there for my child. I mean, I wasn't just dealing with cancer at the time. I was dealing with my back being broken, and the type of cancer I have also puts strain on your bones as well. And I lost my father all in the same time. And I was just like, wow. I must be doing something really good for God for the devil to attack me that bad. Just one individual thing at a time could be very traumatic and very hard for a person. But I got the trifecta. And I was like, okay, okay, this is where you can't listen to the negativity and the negative feelings, and you can't give them power during that time, because then you just be immediately defeated. You need to move forward. You need to keep pushing forward. You need to say, not today, Satan. Like, this is my mission. He is my God, and you have you are not welcome here, and you will never be welcome here. And the worst part is he still thinks he can get you back, and he can't. Once you're saved, you're saved. God's got you. And going through these experiences and hearing these stories from other people, and then just our connection, besides after me stepping up and doing the testimony at the women's conference and being able to touch you. And just recently, like I most recently, as of, let's say, yesterday. Yeah, it was yesterday. I wanted to share this with you because I had a friend of mine who I sing with in the band. That was the other thing. I lost my voice during my treatments, and I got it back after, which I never thought I would. And you know my daughter standing up there singing with me. She just glows the joy of praising God. She really does. And so my girlfriend Megan, she sent me this message, and it says that she was doing a Bible study, heart work, and one of the questions was about who in my church family has influenced my faith. Now, I know you told me, how I gave you hope by hearing my story. Well, she said, I thought of you. I just love how you radiate God's love, how strong your faith is. You aren't afraid to speak up about anything, and you just live boldly for Jesus. You are such a great example for your kids and for everyone who knows you. Thank you for being so loving, encouraging, inspiring, and supportive. I don't consider myself that. So hearing that from her after all I've been through is God's reminder that I'm not done with you yet. And for someone to think that of me when I do not think anything like that. I mean, I am a work in progress. I have to ask for forgiveness every day. Like, I have weak moments. But for people like that to see us that way, it fills my cup up to go fill up somebody else's the next day.
Yeah. And then I don't know. It just answers my question. Like, what are you doing with me, God?
Yeah. What are you wanting us to do now?
Yeah.
We've been through this big ordeal.
What is your purpose in all this? And there is,
and that's why we're doing this. Is because our purpose is for people to understand you're not weak. You do have support out there. Reach out to us. Email, call, text, talk to us. We're not afraid. We were afraid, and we know where you're coming from. We know the weakness. We know the questions. We know the feeling of hopelessness at points. And it's okay. It's okay to feel those moments. Just like I said, it's like my dad said, it's okay to sit in those moments. Just don't stay there too long. I will be that hand that reaches out to you. You will be that hand that reaches out to you. No, you're not alone. And that's the biggest stigma in all of this, in all of our cancer itself, the stigma that you're alone. You feel alone. You feel like nobody understands. You feel like nobody can physically understand or mentally understand or spiritually understand. But then you realize there's stuff like this, like we're talking about right now. Like, you can see God in all things if you're looking for that, but you can also see the evil in all things if that's what you're going to focus on. And if you focus on that for too long, you're defeated before starting. And God didn't give us a fearful heart. He says many times in the Bible to fear not, for he is always with us, and to have no fear. And I think that's the biggest lie the devil tries to give us every day. Fear your thoughts, fear your heart, fear that person, feel the situation, fear this, feel that, constantly every day. And that's why we need to speak out more and be like, no, I'm here. You want to go through it? We can go through it together. You know, you want to scream, you want to cry, you want to yell, you want to go throw things. I can go out in a field. We can go throw things. You know, I have plenty of pillows at my house you can punch. That way you don't hurt yourself because you're fragile during this time, but you can get it out. You know, you want to go for a walk.
Places you can go break things.
Yeah.
Smash things.
Exactly. But it's still productive. You're doing it. You're still stepping forward and saying, not today, not me, not now, not the situation. And I think that's really important. I feel that, you know, some of the tips and tricks I learned were from people that went before me. And I was so thankful that they provided that information to me, that I want to, it's the paying forward kind of method. And I figure if more people pay it forward, and especially with your type of cancer, there's not enough talked about it. There's not enough people knowing, you know, about it. And I feel that you're doing such a great job being an advocate.
There isn't. And there's so many advocates out there. One person, his name's Greg Cantwell, and he's my Facebook friend. But I first spoke to him like probably as soon as I got home. Someone had mentioned him on a Facebook group. Mm-hmm. And so I called him, and he's an 18-year survivor, at least. I think maybe 19 now. You know, and he told me his story. And so that gave me a lot of hope. And then there's this other lady, her name's Cheryl, I forget if it's Broyles or Boyles. Broyles, I think, Cheryl Broyles. She passed away this year. But I mean, even though that's sad to say that, she actually survived 23 years. And she had, I mean, multiple surgeries. I think like 15 or 16 craniotomies. Oh, wow. But she was able to survive 23 years. And so she
survived 23 surgeries. I mean, brain surgeries. Well, it's not like it's that simple either.
I don't think it was 23 years. I don't know how many surgeries, because she has a website, but it hasn't been updated for like a couple years. So I'm not sure.
But that still could be a good basis for people.
Mm-hmm. So that is like, she has a website. She was like, you know, she tells her story, and she helped advocate. She has a book, I think. Greg, he helps advocate. You can call him on the phone. So those are like two like inspirational people, but there's many more. Like my sister connected me with this woman on Facebook somehow through this group that my sister's in. Her husband had it, I think, for 19 years before he passed away. And so I spoke to her, and he was given like 3 months to live, I think 3 to 6 months. And his kids were like little, like they were like toddlers at the time. But he was able to see them grow up. And so that, you know, there's lots of stories out there, so you can't just focus on the negative stories. And right. I mean, God is going to take you when it's your time. Mm-hmm. And so I feel like for me, I'm not going to, I try not to, I mean, of course, you know, I have days where like, I mean, I think about dying every day now. Mm-hmm. I mean, I did before, but I do so more now. But it's not like in a negative light, I don't think. It's more as in, you know, like I'm going to just enjoy this day. I'm going to,
you look at things differently.
Yeah, I look at things differently. Like, why am I still here? Like, God, like, you know, show me, like, why am I still here? What do I need to do? Mm-hmm. Just, yeah, take everything for what it is. Enjoy it. You know, make memories.
Prayer is very big. Praying for other people. Mm-hmm. Like people prayed for us. Prayers do matter. Prayers do have things. And I think that I told my girlfriend, I told her that if she wants to see what the resolution is in regards to prayer, because she feels like she prays all the time and she never gets to see results, or it only happens once in a while. I said, you pray and write down what you're praying about and who you're praying for.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then you go back and you highlight it once it's answered, because I promise you it does get answered one way or another. And as you go in your prayer life, you will notice a lot more is highlighted. Mm-hmm. He does hear you. It's just his time.
Yeah, it's his time. And so he always answers it. It might not be a yes.
Mm-hmm. It might be a no, or it might be
just wait and see.
Yeah.
Because I mean, he, like you said, he does answer them, and I'm glad you brought that up, because like for a while I didn't know how to pray.
Mm-hmm.
I would feel like, I don't know, like I would feel like too selfish.
Mm-hmm.
I'm, of course, like I've gotten the habit of every day I wake up, I say thank you, like I'm still alive, thank you, I'm here today. But I didn't know how to pray about my illness. Like I don't know, like
It's how do you pray to not sound selfish?
yes, and that's where I was like, it was like, do I pray for like to me be healed? Do I pray for a cure? Like how do I pray about this? Like there's
Mm-hmm.
so many people praying, and there's these little kids with cancer, and so I felt guilty about praying for my cancer when there's these little kids. But God is powerful. God is able to do everything. God answers prayers.
And he's still doing miracles to
Yeah, and
this
he
day.
still does miracles. And actually, like, I read through the whole Bible last year. And there's this, I can't remember. I was gonna share this, but I can't remember where at in the Bible. I think it is in Isaiah. Yeah, it's in Isaiah. And there's a king named Hezekiah,
Mm-hmm.
which, I read some of the Old Testament, but I had never read it all the way through. And so there's good
It's
kings.
a hard read.
It is, but I did the Bible recap, and actually that like kept me in line and kept me interested, and I learned so much. And I also did the one where it draws out the little Bible project.
Yes.
I would do that in the beginning, like when we started a new
Mm-hmm. It's more of a visual.
Yeah, but there's a lot of good information, and so I would do that, and we would do a new book,
Mhm.
and then I would do the Bible recap. But this King Hezekiah, oops, sorry, I'm making noise on here. Anyway, he was, I think a prophet went and told him, this is what the Lord says, set your affairs in order, for you are going to die. You will not recover from this illness. So he was very ill, and he was, going down the road, and he was going to die.
Mm-hmm.
He was on the way to death. So then Hezekiah heard this. He turned his face to the wall and prayed to the Lord. Remember, O Lord, how I have always been faithful to you and how I have served you single-mindedly, always doing what pleases you. Then he broke down and wept bitterly. So this king, he's a king, but he prayed to God.
Right.
He was faithful, a faithful servant, and he still wept. And then the prophet, the message came back to Hezekiah and said that basically, I've heard your prayer and seen your tears. I will add 15 years to your life, and I will rescue you. So, and that's what God did. He added 15 years to his life when he was, going to die.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought, well, Hezekiah is praying, and basically like falling at the knees of God or Jesus, and or at the feet, not the knees, but and praying for for help. And so I was like, well, I should still pray.
Mm-hmm.
Then there was this book I also read, and talking about things to listen to and read. This book is like actually really, it's almost like one of those ones where it's so good, but it's also like so sad.
Right.
But it's called I've Seen the End of You, and it's about a neurosurgeon and about his about how he treats and does surgeries on glioblastoma patients. And it's basically called the I've Seen the End of You because, when he was meeting these patients to do the surgeries, he's seen the end, how it results. Like how they get confused, how their body deteriorates, how their mind deteriorates, and then they end up ultimately dying from this disease. And so when he'd first meet these people happy, like, filled with joy, like hope and stuff like that, he would think in his head, I've already seen the end of you. So his thinking, and it's actually, it's based, like, it's a religious book, and he's a Christian in it. But he was, like, he felt, like it was complicated. Like, he felt conflicted of, like, how am I supposed to pray if they're going to die anyway? Like, why should I even pray? Like, he
Right.
got to a point where he was like, why should I pray? Why should I pray to God if they're just
What's
gonna,
the point?
yeah, what's the point of this? And so he went down that bitter road of that. And then he used to go in this chapel and he used to pray in the chapel, and just talk to God and like, what should I do? Like, you know, he felt conflicted. And then there was I don't know if it was a chaplain or a pastor, I can't remember. And then like he pointed him to the picture of the Last Supper,
Mm-hmm.
which this always makes me cry because the book is like, it's so good, but it's like, so it's like you better have a tissue candy, but it's very, very, very good.
Yeah.
And it makes like a lot of good statements. But he's like, you see that picture, like the Last Supper, Jesus knew he was gonna die there.
Right.
Like he already knew what was gonna happen. He knew he was gonna die. But he went after this Last Supper and he went alone and he prayed. He prayed to God and he wept to him and he asked him, you know, of course, to take, you know, if there's
if you could take this from me.
yeah, if you could take this from me, if there's anything else that could be done, you know, if there's another way, he still prayed. And of course, you know, Jesus was sacrificed for our sins, but he still prayed. And so I
Right.
was like, well, yeah, that. And then it like the book, you know, the book changed and he started praying for all his patients. And then the ending of the story is like, he does have one patient that like survived and it was a bittersweet end. But anyway, that book is really good. So
Yeah,
but
there-
that really
that's
made
the important. There's books out there. There's
Mhm.
podcasts out there. There are movies out there.
yeah.
There's newsletters. There's different connections and so many things that can benefit you that you wouldn't even think of, that we really want people to know. And also people listening to this, they have any questions, you know, definitely ask. We will answer them in future podcasts. It's definitely important to reach out and no questions stupid or silly.
No.
We've all been there,
And if we don't know, someone else probably does.
right?
Could help.
And that's the whole thing about community and why it's important to have it and not be alone in this, because you already are not alone if you have God.
Mm-hmm.
So the more you have to your tribe, I like to call it, let's add some more, you know? So I think this is a good point where we can say that next time on the Sea Sisters, we'll be talking about debunking common industry myths and biblical quotes of encouragement that we'll talk about. So come hear more on our podcast on Spotify, Apple, and YouTube.
And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
Don't forget, even if the roughest waves, we know who calms the waters.
We will see you next time on the Sea Sisters.